Hi, so today we're going to look at Perplexity Search API. This is a new API that Perplexity have just released. What we can get out of it is the results that appear within a Perplexity query, which gives us really useful information about potential visibility, where we show our domains, and a little bit about the search index that Perplexity holds. Now, LLMs don't really have a search index in terms of the citations that they deliver, but we can infer from this API where our domain actually shows. So we have built quite a simple automation that looks at that API, calls a bunch of queries that we might want to track, and then ranks them by order, and then pushes them to a Google Sheet. So it has a look at our own website and can actually look at other websites, all the results that appear within a particular query in Perplexity. So let's get into it. We're going to show you the automation, and then we'll walk you through how to set this up on your own. So first thing, we'll just give this a run so we can see the results. What we're doing here is querying the Perplexity Search API. We are looking at the results as they come back, ranking them, setting our own domain, and then logging our own domain results, and then logging all results so we can see. First thing I want to show is what comes back from the API. So we've got a query here, just my own name. We get a title, we get a URL, we get the snippet. So that's the content that actually shows within a search within Perplexity. We also get a date and a last updated, which I'll run through what that is in a moment, but it's very interesting information. So the first thing that we obviously need is a list of queries that we want to track. So Google Sheet, I've got Google Sheet here. We have a tab which has queries. So we've got example queries, PPC agencies, consultant UK, paid search consultancy. So we're having a look at these queries. The first tab is own rank. So this is where my website appeared in any of those queries. We have who can help my paid search in Edinburgh and my own name. So my own website has appeared in these two queries. We can see the title of the page, so that's the meta title. We can see the domain, that's the URL of the page that actually appeared. We can see the date. Now, this date is the date that that website was first found, either through Perplexity, or it's taking the information from the web page itself, or it's looking at registrar of that domain. My website has been around for a very long time, and so that kind of makes sense. But you can effectively edit that by placing information on your website. You can either do that through schema. One of the tests that I found was that schema, it was looking at schema founded attribute. So you can switch that. I wouldn't advise to switch it to anything lower, because I've seen some that come back in the 1800s, which is quite bizarre. Last updated, this is a very interesting attribute, because this means when was the last time that Perplexity updated its information on this web page. So that gives us an indication of index freshness, or how often Perplexity is looking at our page and updating the content that is on that page. Now, I haven't updated any content on these pages for quite a while, so it's not surprising that the last updated is quite over a month prior. The rank, you do not get rank out of this API, so we are inferring that rank based on the order of results. Now, the way that this API is working is it's querying its own search function with the keywords that we provide, and so it's bringing back a list of results that we can then infer. This was position 1, this was position 2, this was position 3. So we've got a function in that automation that calculates that per query, and so we can see, okay, well, we may appear 4th or 3rd for that particular kind of query. So that's quite interesting information. We can start to understand how often are we appearing in Perplexity search, how much we're being visible in that search, and then we've got all the results. So we can only pull in 20 results per query, which makes sense, because if you're beyond 20, you're not really in a search result. So we've got queries here like PPC Agency Edinburgh. We can see all of the 20 search results that we get back. PPC Consultant Scotland, PPC Consultant, etc. So we get 20 results back per query, and we can see all the positions 1 to 20 that they've come back in. We can see the date that it was first discovered. We can see the kind of freshness. If we wanted to, we could also pull in the content for each snippet. So for each URL that's in here, each result, we could have the content being pulled in here as well. I don't pull the content into this Google Sheet, but it's as simple as placing that content in there. I'll show you how to do that now. So a lot of information that could be quite useful. We could look at that to analyze content. So what are competitors doing with their content that we are not, and how can we improve that? So first things first, we've got our keyword list. We connected the Google Sheet as our core list. So all that's doing is looking at that small list of 10 queries and pulling them in. So we set up a Google Sheet node, get keywords. So we just connect our credentials. We're looking at sheet within document, get rows. That's our Perplexity tracker, and then we've got queries. Very simple. It's taking each query as a single item. So we could update that to anything we want. We could put in more queries. However, there is a limit to what you could put in there. And then we're passing it over to a loop. So this loop doesn't necessarily need to be a loop. We can run in concurrency. So we can just have that hitting the API. But the reason that we've put that in a loop is because we want to wait. And I'll get into that in a moment. Perplexity Search API. So we have set credentials here, so you don't see our API. But what you'll need, first of all, is to go to the Perplexity API documents, which is docs.perplexity.ai. You will need Perplexity account and to set up groups and billing. So if you go to groups and billing, you will have to put in your address, verify, and then pay roughly about between $10 and $20 for API tokens to actually use this API. But once you've got that done, then you'll be able to set up an API key. So you go API key management, it'll basically run you through all the documentation on how to set that up. And then once you're ready, generate your API key. Generate your API key and copy that. So once you've got that copied, you'll be able to go into your HTTP request node. You'll want to send header, and in here, what you want is authorization value is bearer space, and then you'll put your token here. So you can set it up that way just to test it, or you can set up a credential if you're going to be testing it more. We want a post method for this request, and the URL is api.perplexity.ai/search. So we don't want that header because we already have a credential. So our body for this call is send body. We're using JSON. We're going to use the fields below. The query is simply we take this query here and we place it there. It's pulling in every single query each time. The max results is 20, so we can only get a maximum results of 20, but if you wanted just 5 to limit the number, then, or 1 even, that you can change that number. The country we've set to GB, so that is looking at the countries. You just change that to your country code, US, etc. This one here, max tokens per page, is an interesting one because we set it to 512 because we're only really interested in the order of results, the rank. However, this dictates how much you get from the content snippet. So if the maximum is 2048, so if we set that to this higher figure, we'd get a much larger snippet. We'd get almost all the content that Perplexity will push out for that result. So it can be a good way of analyzing the content that we see from the results. Now you can see that the results actually don't give you a rank. So we can see that there's my website there. It will give a snippet of the content, it will give the URL, the title, the date that it was first indexed or found, and last updated from Perplexity's results. To get the rank, we've set a bit of a small bit of code here, which you can copy. This just normalizes the results to an array and counts through and gives a rank for each item within that result. So we can see the output here is, rank 1, rank 2, rank 3. Because again, what this is doing is looking at the results on that query. So it's putting the query into the results, into the search, and each result is going to be, we can infer that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a way, it's not accurate, but it's a way of understanding potentially where you show. So the next step is that we set, so we've got a set node here, and now we are taking the query from a step back. So we say loop over items, which is a step back, and we're taking the query, which is this, from that previous node. Now the reason we do this is because we want the query attached to each item, just so we know that is related to that query for the next step. The target domain, so this is where you would put in your own domain, what you want to pull out of the results to find your own website or a particular competitor's website, how they are ranking. We've got a little bit of a code that looks for that particular target domain. So this is just a way of understanding that in each item. So we pass that through on each item. We just merge it together by position. So you can see we've got the previous call and this, and we just combine it all together. So we've got our query, we've got a target domain, then we've got the result set, which has got the rank in it. So we've set all of that, and then we wait. So we've put a very small wait here, because if we had many queries, like if we had 100 queries, it would be hitting the API too fast. So we put a tiny wait and to give it a bit of time, so we're not getting any breakdowns. Now, when you're calling that search API, apparently it's about $5 per 1,000 requests. So we're looking at about 5 cents per 10 keyword calls. I mean, that's what I'm seeing in my own API usage. So it's actually pretty cheap compared to looking at other LLM visibility APIs or keyword-based search indexes. So it's a cheap way of understanding for this particular LLM, where, are we visible? Are we looking at different queries? Who's showing up for what queries? So very interesting, cheap API. So once all that's done, once we've gone through the loops, we get our items out. The first path up here, find your own domain. So we'll go into this code, this bit of custom code. We're basically parsing each URL based on the host name. So we're trying to normalize that domain, and then we're checking that domain that gets pulled out. And the reason we do this is because we set that target domain before, malcolmgibb.co.uk, but there may be subdomains, there may be different URLs, different pages that we don't want to show for, and so we have to match that against the target domain that we set. So that's all we're effectively doing here. We're matching the target domain against what's found in those results. You can pause and copy this, and then the output of this is only the results based on that target domain. So we can see here we've only got 2 results back from all of these result sets based on this code. And then what we do here is we've got a set node which will just normalize the results. So you can see we're not taking in a snippet, which is the content, but we could. We're just setting the date as well, so we can understand when did we call the API. So we've got date ISO. So this is our internal function for n8n. We've got $now dot to ISO, which will give us the dates in ISO format, and then we've got slice 0 to 10. Now if I take that out, you'll see what that does. So we've got the time and seconds and microseconds there as well, and the actual time zone. So this just gives us a nice little, we called it on the 13th of October. And then we set the query, we've just got all the same here. We could theoretically just upload what we've got here, but it's always nice to just set the attributes that you want. We could normalize or format them in a different way. So we set the title, which is the page title, we set the domain, the dates that we talked about, so this is that date there, last updated, and the rank. So we get two small items there, which we can upload straight into Google Sheets. So again, you just want a Google Sheet that has those columns: date, ISO, query, title, domain, date, last updated, and rank. A good way to do it is just follow what attributes you're setting and then set it to map automatically with Normalise API calls, and it'll do it all itself. So all that does is just append new row for those two results. So we've got our own rankings, our own visibility here. What we want to do next is actually just pass this on to extract all results. So this is just pushing in all those 20 results for every single query into the Google Sheets. So this code slightly different. So we're building the root domain from the host name. So if it's something like, docs.malcolmgibb.co.uk, it will build malcolmgibb.co.uk. So then we can start to have a normalization there, and it'll take out things like subdomains and everything else, and it will deduplicate the URLs if there's more than one URL of within the same search result. So you can see here, I'll just scroll there and then scroll here. Yeah, so it's outputting similar information. We also have obviously the host name and the root domain, and you'll see what I meant by how it creates the root domain. So if we have something like findandupdate.companyinformation.service.gov.uk, it will take the root domain out of that, which is is gov.uk, but service.gov.uk, to deduplicate against any other results that may appear within that. Because you can see the URL can be quite long as well. And then we've got the time extracted, so we just put a nice ISO time in there. We don't necessarily have to. And again, we just normalize those results into a nice little item that we can pass up to Google Sheets. So we've got a same to ISO date, we've got a query, we've got a title, we've got a URL, we've got a date, we've got a last updated and ranked. And again, that just passes it to Google Sheets. So now we have our own visibility across those queries, and not necessarily competitors, but it gives us an idea of, okay, for this search query, who is potentially actually showing up and in what kind of order. You can see, okay, are they actually number one for that term? And then this will just repeat. If you ran it the next day, it would just create more results underneath per search query. So how we use that is we've got a pivot table that looks up by day. So it can be a nice little graph that we can use to understand, has anybody increased in position, or like what's going on the Perplexity search results, and you could do more with it. You could use it to analyze content. You could take that snippet that we found, all this information here, and use that to analyze content. How can we improve content to improve the results? So yeah, there's a lot of cool things you can do with the Search API, and it's very cheap compared to other APIs. Now, LLMs don't really have a search index, so I think the idea of ranking or keyword ranking is not the same as a Google search engine. So these ranks are not necessarily what we'd think of as keyword ranks. They're just at the time of API call, where did these results appear? So that is the kind of misconception behind LLM visibility, just before we get into trying to track ranks. But it's a very interesting way of basically an open way of trying to understand, are we actually showing within LLMs? Are we actually showing within Perplexity? Now, this is only specific to Perplexity. We do have one for GPT as well, which is built in a very different way. You could do all kinds of things with this automation, where you could connect it to a database, connect it to Looker Studio, and have it visualize all that information. But we found it fun to build with this API. And if you like this, subscribe, put something in the comments, ask questions. We'll provide the bits of code to help you build this yourself, and reach out if you want any help building this.